I can't quite explain why I felt drawn to Harrow House. It had always been there in the background of my life, this crumbling structure that everyone in town avoided like the plague. People would say it was cursed, that strange things had happened there, but most of them were just rumors. Yet, something in me couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, something I had to discover. My curiosity was insatiable, and when Eliza contacted me, I thought it was fate. She seemed like a fresh escape from my monotonous world, where the closest thing to excitement was scrolling through strangers' lives on social media. Her invitation to explore the mansion felt like the perfect way to break out of the ordinary, but nothing could have prepared me for what awaited that night. The air was cold and damp when I arrived at Harrow House, and the trees seemed to loom over the place, their twisted branches scratching against the windows as if they were trying to reach inside. The mansion's roof had caved in on one side, exposing dark, hollowed-out spaces. Its windows were shattered, and the front door hung crookedly, as if it had been waiting to be opened for years. The place was imposing, oppressive, even in the pale moonlight. The overgrown garden added to its eerie charm, with vines crawling up the walls and strangling the remnants of any once proud structure. I arrived early, mostly out of nervousness. Part of me thought I might just walk away. The thought of entering a place with such a sinister reputation made my heart race. But I stayed. My phone buzzed. Eliza had messaged me, confirming she would be there by midnight. I looked at the time. It was 11:30 p.m. I decided to walk around the mansion, hoping to distract myself while I waited. As I did, I felt an odd sense of being watched, like eyes were trailing me from the dark corners of the house. I tried to shake it off. This was just a place people talked about, nothing more. But as I stood in the shadow of the house, something felt wrong. Minutes ticked by, and soon it was past midnight. Eliza hadn't shown up. I pulled my phone from my pocket, staring at her profile again. Something about it bothered me. Her flawless photos, the way her eyes seemed to stare directly into mine in every shot. The pictures from Harrow House, though, were the most unsettling. They were blurry, but in a way that seemed intentional, almost like they were meant to distort reality. The colors were washed out, the shadows too deep. My stomach churned as I scrolled, and that's when I saw it. A message from Eliza, sent just moments before. "I'm outside, come to back." My pulse quickened. I didn't even think about it. I walked around the side of the mansion, my footsteps loud against the gravel path. The back of the house was even more dilapidated. Wooden beams exposed to the elements. The stench brought heavy in the air. I hesitated, wondering if this was a prank. Maybe Eliza had been leading me on from the start. Maybe she was never going to show up, and now I was just an idiot standing alone at midnight, staring at an empty house. But then I saw it, a figure. It was standing in the shadow of the trees, its outline indistinct in the darkness. I couldn't make out any features, but it was definitely there, waiting. I called out. No response. My heart pounded louder, but I pressed on. My feet carried me forward before my mind could catch up with the fear. "Eliza?" I asked, my voice shaky. The figure didn't move at first, but then it took a step forward. I froze. Something was horribly wrong. The figure seemed to shimmer, its shape flickering like it didn't belong in the physical world. The breeze that swept past me was freezing, biting into my skin. My breath caught in my throat as the figure stepped into the moonlight. It was her, or it looked like her. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. Her features were twisted, her skin pallid and cracked as if it had been stretched too thin. The beautiful, sharp angles of her face had dissolved into something grotesque. Her eyes, once piercing blue, were now hollow and unblinking, like empty pits. A twisted grin stretched across her face, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too jagged. Her long black hair hung in ragged strands around her face, and it seemed to shift and move on its own, like something alive. My legs felt like lead. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. My body was paralyzed. I had to look away, but my eyes wouldn't leave her. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt tight. My mind raced, trying to piece together the impossible. This wasn't Eliza. It couldn't be. I backed away, but before I could turn to flee, something icy wrapped around my ankle, pulling me down hard onto the cold ground. My heart hammered in my chest, and panic surged through me. I tried to kick free, but the grip was unyielding. Something was holding me. The world around me began to twist, the mansion itself stretching and warping, like it was alive, like it was breathing. The walls groaned. The windows seemed to open and close like blinking eyes. I felt like I was falling into some otherworldly place, somewhere between reality and nightmare. A voice, low and rasping, slithered through the air, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "I've been waiting for you." The words echoed to my skull, reverberating from every corner, every crack in the house. I could feel the presence, whatever was crawling closer, whisper my name. My mind was flooded with a rush of images, flashes of faces, of things that didn't make sense. Faces that weren't mine. Faces that twisted and contorted. Faces that seemed to stare back at me from every mirror, every reflective surface. And then, as quickly as it had started, everything went black. I woke up hours later, lying in the dirt outside the mansion. My body ached. My head throbbed like it was being crushed by an invisible weight. The first thing I noticed was my phone. It lay beside me, cracked and dirty, its screen shattered. As I picked it up, I saw that Eliza's profile had disappeared. It was gone, vanished without a trace. There was no sign of her, no trace of the grotesque figure. It was as if she had never existed. The police arrived not long after, their faces filled with concern as they helped me to my feet. They asked what had happened, but I couldn't explain. How could I make sense of something so unreal? They found no physical evidence of the mansion, no footprints, no blood, nothing to suggest anyone had been there but me. And yet, I knew what I had seen. I could still hear the whispers in my ears, feel the cold grip on my ankle. The most disturbing thing? Every time I look into a mirror now, I see her face. Eliza, or something like her. Her eyes stare back at me, hollow and knowing. And in the silence of my own home, I can still hear the echo of her voice, calling me, waiting for me. And I know, deep down, that I never left Harrow House. It's inside me now. It's always been. It was a quiet evening, the kind I had always loved. The sun was sinking beneath the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees as I packed up my camera gear, preparing for my hike back to the cabin. The woods had a comforting familiarity to them, despite their isolation. The air was crisp, the kind that made you breathe a little deeper, inhaling the fresh scent of pine and damp earth. It had been a productive day, capturing the fading light in nature's intricate details, and I was eager to get back to my cozy cabin to unwind. As I trudged up the familiar path toward home, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped to check it, assuming it was just a message from my mother or perhaps an update on my latest social media post. But when I looked at the screen, my heart skipped a beat. It was an Instagram message from Laura, an old friend from college who had moved across the country years ago. The message simply said, "Samantha, is this you?" And it was attached to a photo. I swiped open the image, and my blood ran cold. It was a picture of a creature. No, it was more than that. It was something otherworldly. Its dark, almost black form was hidden in the shadows of the trees near my cabin, but its glowing eyes pierced through the darkness. My stomach dropped as I stared at the photo, realizing with a sickening certainty that the angle from which it had been taken seemed as if someone was standing right behind me in my cabin. A feeling of dread, far worse than anything I'd ever experienced, overtook me. My breath caught in my throat. I quickly opened the full image and zoomed in, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The creature, if it could even be called that, appeared hunched, its features indistinct except for those eyes, those terrifying, piercing eyes that seemed to see straight through the screen. It didn't belong in my world. It didn't belong anywhere. But the most unsettling detail of all was a dark shape that stood just behind the creature, something that looked so eerily familiar. It was the exact spot in my cabin where I had just been standing not half an hour ago. My heart raced, my mind spinning. I shook my head, telling myself it was a trick of the light, a weird camera glitch, or perhaps even a prank. Laura had always had a strange sense of humor. But then, another realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. The photo wasn't just some random snapshot. No, it had been taken after I had left the cabin, after I had walked out to take photos in the woods. The strange thing was that the photo was time-stamped only a few minutes before I had received the message. There was no way it could have been taken by anyone else. I had been alone. I checked my phone's location history. The map lit up with the usual route I took to the woods. But there, right at the edge of the forest near my cabin, was a strange pin marking a location. It was the exact spot where I had taken photos earlier in the day. But here's the thing that didn't make sense. My phone had been off for hours after a malfunction that left it dead for a while. How could the location history update itself if the phone had been off? That's when I started to feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. Something wasn't right. I tried to shake it off as paranoia, but the pit in my stomach only deepened. I quickly texted Laura back, asking what she meant, but there was no response. Something was wrong. The knot in my chest tightened as I walked toward the door, grabbing my flashlight and peering out into the rapidly darkening evening. I needed to see if there was any explanation, something that would bring me back to some semblance of normalcy. When I stepped outside, the cold night air bit my skin, the shadows of the forest stretching long and ominous. My dog, Toby, was barking furiously, his eyes wide and frantic as he stood at the edge of the yard, growling into the darkness. His usual friendly demeanor had completely shifted, replaced by an anxiety I'd never seen in him before. I called to him, but he didn't respond. The barking grew more intense, almost desperate. I grabbed his collar, trying to calm him down, but his body tensed under my hand, and his growls grew louder. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement at the corner of my eye. At first, it was so quick that I thought I had imagined it, but there was again a tall, dark figure darting between the trees, moving faster than anything human should have been able to. My heart slammed against my ribcage, and I froze in place, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Toby's frantic barking continued, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the dark shape moving through the forest. It wasn't an animal, no. This was something different. It moved too fluidly, too unnaturally. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the spot where the figure had disappeared into the woods. My mind raced, trying to rationalize what I had just seen. Was it a trick of the light? Maybe a person, perhaps a hunter, or someone out for a walk. But no. Deep down, I knew it wasn't human. It wasn't anything I could explain. I stood frozen, my pulse thudding in my ears, until Toby yanked me back to reality, pulling me toward the cabin door. We spent the night inside, every creak and crack of the cabin's wooden walls sounding like the whisper of something lurking just beyond the window. Toby refused to settle down, constantly pacing and growling at nothing, his eyes scanning the shadows. I tried to distract myself with anything, books, music, even the television, but it was useless. My mind kept drifting back to the creature, the glowing eyes, and the unsettling feeling that something was watching me from the dark. The next morning, the world seemed strangely quiet. The sun had risen, its pale light streaming through the trees. I was exhausted, but the fear that had gripped me the night before was still lingering in my chest, an insistent weight. I grabbed my phone to check for any updates, but when I opened Instagram again, the message from Laura was gone. I was stunned, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through my messages. There was no trace of her account, nothing to explain the strange photos she had sent. Her profile had vanished completely, as if it had never existed. The creeping feeling in my gut returned. The photo, however, remained. I stared at it again, unable to look away, as if it had become burned into my memory. There in the dark was that creature, its glowing eyes staring right at me. And now, with Laura's account gone, I couldn't shake the suspicion that whatever had been lurking in the woods had been watching me long before I had ever noticed. The creature, the shadow in the trees, wasn't just something I had imagined. It was real, and it had been following me, waiting for me to find it. I couldn't explain it, and I knew I would never be able to. But I also knew one thing for sure. I wasn't safe, not in the woods, not in my cabin, not anywhere. That night, as I sat by the window, watching the dark, empty forest, I couldn't help but feel the weight of those glowing eyes, following me. always watching. I wasn't alone anymore, and I wasn't sure if I ever would be again.